night folds itself around the island like a velvet cloak, and the present slips quietly away. Across a moonlit ocean the centuries roll backward, each wave a silver page turning until at last time settles, hushed and newborn, upon Aotearoa's untouched shores. There are no harbors yet, no names sung into maps, no echo of paddles or rum-drum of engines, only the long elemental breath of wind and tide. In that breath, the island sleeps and dreams, waiting for morning. Before we begin, I would love to know where in the world you are listening from and what's the time there. Let us know in the comments. Thank you so much for being the part of my community. Let's get started. At dawn, the first light spills over cloud-crowned peaks and tumbles in wide, slow rivers down their forested flanks. Mist rises from deep gullies where tree ferns spread their fronds like feathered umbrellas, catching pearls of water that glimmer and fall in soft applause. Kauri stand farther north, solemn pillars of scented resin and pale bark, while to the south the young southern Alps push slate shoulders toward the sky, their heads wrapped in winter even as spring unfurls at their feet. Everywhere, the land is green upon green, layered like breaths in a quiet room. Listen, the air carries wings. Two I loop through corridors of sunlight, their twin white throat plumes bobbing as they trill notes that sound like water laughing in glass. Kareru beat slow and heavy overhead, bellies gleaming sea pearl where the light catches them. Fantails flip and curtsy on twisting insect roads, their voices quick as sparks. Yet in the hush beneath these melodies lies a deeper hush still, the footfall of something large, deliberate, almost solemn. Across fern mats and moss carpets move shadows as tall as small trees, leaving nothing broken behind them, only the gentle swirl of leaf and air as they pass. They are the ancestors of the moa, colossal yet quiet, 8 broad toes pressing runes into the earth. Their necks sway like river reeds, and their eyes, dark as forest pools, hold a patient knowing carved by millennia. They graze on peppery horopito leaves, on soft spear grass, on berries the size of midnight kisses. Where they walk, a trail of foraged greenery bends, but by evening new shoots are already lifting, eager to join tomorrow's light. The rhythm is tender, unhurried. Step, lean, pluck, breathe. Seasons revolve upon the silent axle of the sun, and the island's song changes its key without ever losing its tune. In summer, cicadas stitch the heat together with shrill threads. Resin scents rise from split bark. Waterfalls thin to veils. In autumn, the beech forests ignite, gold, amber, rust, then drift their leaves into streams that carry color toward the waiting sea. Winter draws soft white curtains across the higher valleys. Snow hushes every wing beat. Even the moa move with heavier care, breaking crusts of ice to reach buried tussock. Then comes spring again, and hollows fill with baby bird voices, and the air tastes of nectar and new hope. Through it all, the Southern Cross wheels above, an ancient compass that needs no names. Night after night, the stars polish the dark until it gleams like obsidian, and the moon climbs from the ocean trailing argent ribbons. In those silver hours, the moa rest in loose gatherings, knees folded beneath feathered hulks. Their breath clouds, drifts, fades. Moths whisper across their dozing backs like pale thoughts. Somewhere, a moorpork calls, roo-roo, roo-roo, its soft repetition a lullaby for everything that listens. Among the valleys sleeps one particular nesting hollow, cupped in roots and fern fans, hidden from the sky but open to the steady heartbeat of earth. There, 2 mottled eggs lie beneath the warmth of a vigilant hen, shells haloed by stray plumes and moonlight. Each night she settles, breast to shell, and the silence around her is immense yet kind, a promise that nothing needs to hurry here. In the damp dark beneath, new life folds itself, cell by cell, tracing a map of bones and sinew older than memory. Daybreak again. A thin shaft of sun spears the hollow, glancing off a single droplet poised on the lip of a frond. It quivers, then tips, falling upon the eggshell with a sound too slight for ears, but not for spirits. Inside, the chick stirs. A micro-fracture spiders outward, almost invisible. The mother cocks her head, amber eye bright as dawn, and draws a slow breath scented with loam and moss and distant salt spray. She does not yet move. She simply waits, as the land has always waited, for tides, for bird song, for the next soft miracle. Beyond the hollow, the day grows. The Moa clan drifts through ribbons of fog that lift and dissolve into the sun. Their legs leave mirrored impressions on dew-soaked ground, each footprint a quiet stanza in the island's long unfurling poem. To walk here is to read that poem aloud, though no tongue can shape the syllables. There are lines about volcanic fire cooling to fertile ash, about forests knitting scars across old lava flows, about winds crossing half a planet to rest in valley arms. And always, woven through, a refrain. You belong, you belong, you belong. Far off, glacial rivers twist like lit glass between stands of kahikatea. Eels slide beneath their surface, shadows on shadows, patient for flood-tossed insects. On the braided flats, wrybill skirts scurry, bills curved like crescent moons, drawing silver commas in wet sand. Overhead, the albatross glide, wingtips writing silent runes against the atmosphere. The moa seldom watch the sky. They are creatures of ground and green. But in the corner of a liquid eye, a pale wing still flickers, and some half-remembered vertebra inherited from dinosaur ancestors hums in recognition. Rain arrives without warning, as it often does. Sheets of cool abundance sweeping in from a horizon thick with pewter, cloud. Fern fronds bow beneath the sudden weight. Nikau palms rattle like shaken jewelry. Large drops spatter the moa's plumage, beating on the coarse feathers before rolling away, tiny mirrors carrying curved portraits of the sky. The flock stands patient, heads lowered the way mountains lower peaks into fog, and the rain falls through them like time itself, cleansing, renewing, whispering secrets in a language too round and old for consonants. When the clouds part, the earth smells reborn. Steam lifts off sunstruck moss, and droplets jewel every spider's web. A rainbow arches momentarily above a distant ridge, and one moa pauses, neck high, watching color marry sky and earth. She does not know the word for covenant, but she feels it, woven into sinew, knitted into breastbone, beating in tandem with the land's pulse. Years slip by like water over stone, smoothing edges no eye can see but every foot can feel. Chicks hatch, grow tall, wander, elders slow, rest deeper, fade like twilight. Yet the balance remains, life in exchange for life, leaf for sunshine, breath for breath. Nothing breaks the stillness except the practiced flutter of a kareru landing too heavily on a pliant branch, or the hush of a moa's massive body parting undergrowth. Even death joins the hush, folding spent feathers back into soil that will cradle new spores, new stems, new song. One dusk, a comet glows low in the western sky, its tail an iced brushstroke against apricot haze. Though no creature here counts calendars, the whole island seems to pause, as if remembering other celestial fires, other omens. But the light passes, and life resumes its measured cadence. Mountains keep their counsel. Rivers go on speaking their liquid scripture to every stone they touch. The moa, oblivious to augury, lean into their evening forage, trusting the deep grammar of stars and rivers that has always meant safety. Yet even in paradise, change gathers like unseen cloud. Far across the sea, where the horizon curves to meet other horizons, people carve canoes from great trees and lace them with woven flax. They read stars the way Moa read rivers, and they too feel a pull, an invitation whispered across waves older than their lineage. They prepare for journeys, though no foot has yet broken the island's grass. In the hush of future night fires, they will speak of birds taller than warriors and footprints broad as plates, of feathers for cloaks, of meat for feasts. But that story waits, coiled like fern koru, still green. For now, only the wind arrives, and it arrives empty-handed. It combs the tussock, lifts the tui's feather song higher, threads through the moa's down like a gentle reassurance that all remains as it should be. Twilight settles upon the land in layers of violet and rose until at last it folds into the ink of night. Stars kindle again. 10,000 lanterns hung for no audience but themselves, and the Southern Cross tilts to light the island's dreaming face. Back in the nesting hollow, the tiny crack has widened. A chip of shell flakes free and lies like pale quartz upon the moss. From within comes a tremor, a whistle, small chirp, another tremor. The hen shifts slightly, her great body curving protectively, but her gaze remains on the dark around them, calm and unblinking. She remembers storms. She remembers drought. She remembers ghosts of eruptions born before her grandmother's grandmother. Everything passes, but life insists. Beyond, the other moa bed down, some standing, some folding at the knee, their silhouettes bulking against a panoply of drifting constellations. Here and there, eyelids droop, though no danger looms. Muscles slacken, though hearts beat strong. Somewhere, the first more pork of night begins its low call, and another answers, and between the two voices the island breathes a slow amen. The hush thickens, deepens, becomes a blanket, until, in a far-off valley, a soft rumble rolls where no thundercloud sails. It is only a hill giving way beneath its own soaked weight, mud sliding down to kiss the river. Yet the sound travels, plucking slender threads of tension in every listening chest, as if to remind the forest that even paradise can shift in its sleep. The moa raise their heads, stare into darkness, then settle again when no echo follows. Still, the sound lingers like a half-remembered dream, there, then not there, yet never fully gone. In the hollow, another sliver of shell falls. A beak as small as a thorn pokes through, taps, withdraws, taps again. Inside, eyes unaccustomed to light flutter behind thin lids, sensing sunrise before seeing it. Outside, the mother exhales a sigh that tastes of fern dust and moonlight, and something more. A secret tenderness braided into every breath she will ever take. The night holds its own breath with her, waiting. Hours drift. Morning creeps softly, parting mists like curtains of spun sugar. A single stitchbird pierces the silence with its rapid-fire squeak, as if announcing the day's curtain rise. Light washes the forest floors, spills into the hollow, and touches the cracked egg with a whisper of gold. The beak pushes once more, and the shell at last yields, opening like a quiet flower. A new moa chick blinks into the oldest morning it will ever know. And there, with the first soft wobble of untested legs, the island's timeless story finds a new verse, though the verse is fragile as dew, and the melody not yet sure. The mother bends, nudging damp down into order, humming a rumble that is half growl, half lullaby. The chick chirps, flutters its miniature wings that will never lift it from the ground, and listens to the rhythm of its own heartbeat. Faster than the island's, but already learning to slow. High overhead, clouds glide like white waka across an ocean blue sky, unknowing carriers of tomorrow's rain. tomorrow's seeds, tomorrow's whispers of distant sails. For now, the day belongs to greenness and quiet, the tiny miracle of a bird finding its feet. The forest exhales, the world begins again, and somewhere, in the hush between heartbeats, the first shadow of change turns over in its sleep, but does not yet awaken. Morning unfurls across the island with a softness that feels almost deliberate, as if light itself has chosen to linger here a little longer before climbing the day's full height. The ferns, tall as doorways, gather the golden spill on their fronds, letting droplets slide like glass beads toward the forest floor. A hush still cradles the undergrowth, broken only by the fine chime of insects stirring in shafts of sun. In the hidden hollow where the giant ferns lean inward, the new moa chick rests against the warmth of her mother's side. She is small enough still to fit beneath a wing, though her legs, already sturdy, long, hint at the tall shadow she will one day cast upon these same glades. Her down is the color of leaf litter, a perfect mimicry for the dappled floor, each tuft catching the light in a faint halo. Her breathing is fast, urgent with newness, yet it slows each time she presses closer to the steady drum of her mother's heart. The mother shifts, lowering her head to preen the soft crown of the chick. Her beak moves with care, turning aside the tiny seeds and fragments of moss that cling to the hatchling's down. Each touch is a quiet reassurance. You are here, you are safe, you belong. The chick blinks up, her dark eyes wide and unclouded, mirrors for the green ceiling above. Already, her gaze follows the movement of leaves, the passing shadow of a dragonfly, the quiver of fern stems in the breeze. Every shape is new, every sound is a question waiting to be learned. The day begins with the mother rising to forage. The chick wobbles after her, knees bending and straightening in unsure rhythm. The ground is uneven, scattered with roots and fallen fronds, but the soft earth takes her weight gently, allowing her to stumble without harm. She tests her neck's reach toward a tender leaf, tries a nibble and pulls back at the strange bitterness. A beetle clicks past, its shell shining like wet bark, and she follows, forgetting the leaf entirely. Above them, the canopy sways in slow applause. Tua dart through sunbeams, their bell notes spilling in bright, tumbling loops. A kareroo lands on a nearby branch, the sudden heaviness sending a tremor through the leaves that sprinkles light across the forest floor. The chick startles, freezing mid-step, and only relaxes when her mother moves calmly on, unbothered. She learns quickly. Not all sudden sounds mean danger. Some are simply the voice of the forest rearranging itself. By mid-morning, the two reach a clearing where the sun falls unbroken. The mother grazes on soft shoots at the clearing's edge, plucking them with slow precision. The chick, meanwhile, explores the warmth of open ground. Here, the scents are stronger. Sun-warmed soil, crushed grass, the faint tang of wild berries. She pecks experimentally at a fallen leaf, then at a patch of moss, then at nothing at all, just to feel the motion of beak against earth. Each tiny action plants a root in her memory. This is how the world feels. When the heat deepens toward midday, they retreat to shade. In the dappled coolness, the chick lies down, legs folding neatly beneath her, head resting against her breast. The forest hums a low, endless song, cicadas weaving the air into a shimmering curtain, the gentle rush of a stream somewhere beyond sight, the occasional rustle of a skink in the leaf litter. She drifts toward sleep, yet remains half aware of the towering shape of her mother nearby, a living landmark, a constant in a landscape that will one day be hers to roam. The days that follow stretch like golden thread, each one weaving the chick deeper into the pattern of life here. She learns to move with her mother's shadow, to pause when the older bird pauses, to watch the tilt of her head when listening for what cannot yet be seen. They feed in the cool mornings, rest in the bright hours, move again in the long afternoons until the sun sinks low. By night they stand together in the hush, their breathing rising in white plumes beneath the southern cross. Her legs strengthen with each passing day, her steps surer, her neck higher. She begins to taste a wider range of leaves, some sharp, some sweet, some tough but worth the effort. She discovers that the berries of the miro tree stain her beak dark, that moss holds tiny drops of water after rain, that young shoots push up in the same places each spring. These are her first understandings, small and ordinary, yet they are the foundation of survival. Sometimes they cross paths with other moa, tall hens, broad-chested males, younger birds with bright eyes and restless strides. Greetings are simple, a pause, a shared gaze, the soft sway of necks. There are no battles for dominance here, no chase or contest. Space is plenty, food abundant. The island's green heart beats wide enough to hold them all. One evening, they wander toward a low ridge that opens onto a view of the plains. The chick stands at the crest, the wind pressing gently into her feathers, and sees the land stretch away in a quilt of greens and golds. Rivers thread silver between forest patches. Distant hills rise blue in the haze. She feels something unnameable then, a pull both outward and inward, as if the horizon has whispered a promise meant only for her. She does not yet know that one day her feet will press prints into every kind of ground she can see from here. The forest shifts as the season tilts. Rains fall heavier now, feeding the roots and swelling the streams. Ferns grow lush, their fronds arching like green cathedrals over the paths. The chick revels in the softness of the wet season, how the ground springs back underfoot, how each drop that lands on her feathers rolls cool down her sides. She watches her mother drink from a stream and imitates her, lowering her head to the water's skin, feeling it touch her beak before drawing it in. It is colder than she expects, but it tastes like the heart of the island itself. In the long rains, the forest smells sharper. Peppermint from crushed torpedo leaves, the spice of wet bark, the faint sweetness of blooming kiki. The chick learns to recognize these scents as she moves, storing them alongside the shapes of trees and the rhythms of birdsong. They are her map, drawn in breath and memory rather than lines and ink. One morning, just after rain, the forest seems made entirely of light. Droplets cling to every edge, catching the sun so that even the smallest spider's thread gleams like silver wire. The chick walks among the glitter, each step sending tiny prisms tumbling from fern tips. She pauses often, not to feed but simply to watch. The way the light moves, the way it clings, the way it falls. She does not know she is watching something fleeting. For her, each moment is complete. Her mother begins to range farther, leading her to new feeding grounds. They pass through groves where the air is cool and still, the canopy closing tight above. Cross tussock plains where the wind runs unchecked, tugging at their feathers. Skirt the edges of wetlands where pied stilts wade through the shallows, their legs thin as reeds. Everywhere they go, the chick adds new pieces to her world. Textures beneath her feet, flavors on her tongue, colors in the sky, the island gives freely, and the moa take only what they need. In this balance, there is no sense yet of danger, no shadow of hunger. The chick grows taller, her neck rising like a young sapling toward the light, her stride lengthening to match her mother's. When they stand together now, they cast twin shadows across the ferns, and the forest seems to acknowledge her as part of its living pattern. One evening, the air carries a different note, a coolness that is not just the day's fading heat, but something deeper, a turning of the season. The chick lifts her head, nostrils flaring, and feels the change without understanding it. Her mother stands still beside her, watching the dark gather between the trunks. Somewhere in that gathering dark, the first hint of her future stirs. But for now, the night comes softly, and the great ferns close their fronds above her like a guardian's hands. She lies down in their shadow, eyes heavy, the earth warm beneath her. Her mother stands watch, head high, until the stars emerge one by one. The Southern Cross tilts, the forest breathes, and in the small circle of their shared warmth, the chick dreams of nothing more than the next green morning. Morning returns with the hush of mist that drapes itself across the ferns like a patient hand. The forest seems to hold its breath, waiting for the first sound to stir it into life. It comes in the soft shuffle of two pairs of feet, one strong and steady, the other still finding its rhythm. The young moa walks close to her mother, each step a careful echo of the one before. Her legs, though longer now, still carry a hint of the wobble that marked her earliest days. Today will be a day of learning. The mother moves with purpose, leading her through a lattice of undergrowth where light filters down in shifting shapes, dappling their feathers in shadow and gold. The air is thick with the sense of damp earth and the faint sweetness of moss warmed by the first thin beams of sun. The chick's head lifts, nostrils flaring, as each new scent draws her attention. They emerge into a glade where the ground is carpeted with young shoots, bright and tender. The mother lowers her head and begins to feed, plucking with a deliberate motion, crushing the leaves between her beak before swallowing. The chick watches closely, then mirrors the action, awkwardly at first, tearing more than she eats, but improving with each attempt. Some shoots are soft and sweet, others sharp on the tongue. She learns by taste as much as by sight, building a silent catalog of what will sustain her. Above them, tua chase each other in quick arcs, their songs bright and tumbling. The forest canopy is alive with movement, the leaves shifting in a breeze that barely reaches the ground. Sunlight scatters in fragments, flashing across the chick's eyes, and she blinks at the sudden bursts of brightness. Her beak glistens with moisture from the leaves, and she pauses to swallow, lifting her head to listen. Somewhere deeper in the trees, a distant, low call rises, a sound she does not yet know but feels as a vibration in her chest. By mid-morning, they are moving again, stepping over the dark roots that twist like sleeping serpents across the forest floor. The chick stumbles once, catching her foot against a hidden root, and flutters her small, useless wings for balance. Her mother does not slow but glances back, as if to say, "Get up, the ground will not wait for you." And she does, finding her footing again, legs surer than before. They come upon a patch of broad-leafed plants whose stems are crowned with berries the color of late afternoon shadows. The mother feeds slowly, choosing the ripest ones, and the chick tries a berry of her own. Its skin bursts between her beak, releasing a taste that is both tart and sweet, staining the edges of her beak in deep purple. She swallows, then takes another, discovering that the flavor lingers, a soft echo at the back of her tongue. The air changes. What was once still begins to carry a coolness, a shift that runs ahead of distant clouds. The mother lifts her head, feathers ruffling in the breeze. She stands still for a moment, reading the air, and then begins to walk again, her steps unhurried but sure. The chick follows, glancing upward as the light dulls and the canopy sways with the coming wind. The first drops of rain are scattered, almost playful, tiny splashes on leaves, small ripples in the puddles that have not yet dried, from yesterday. The chick tilts her head, feeling the cool touch along her feathers. She takes a few steps into the open and stands still, letting the droplets find her. It is not unpleasant. The water slides across her down, gathering at the tips before falling to the ground. Then the rain thickens. The soft patter becomes a steady drumming, each drop striking with a rhythm that fills the forest. The ferns bow beneath the weight. The moss darkens to a richer green. The air grows heavy with the mingled scent of wet bark, crushed leaves, and earth turned fresh. The chick blinks against the drops, shaking her head now and then, but she does not run for cover. Instead, she watches her mother feed calmly in the rain, each movement unbothered by the weather's insistence. Soon, water is streaming from every surface, running down trunks, dripping from fronds, pooling in the hollows between roots. The chick lowers her head to drink from one such pool. The water is cold enough to startle her tongue, but it tastes clean, almost alive. She drinks again, the chill making her eyes half close in pleasure. The rain continues through the afternoon, soaking the forest into a dreamlike haze. Shapes blur in the distance. Colors deepen until every leaf seems edged with shadow. Somewhere beyond sight, a river swells, its voice rising in a low, constant murmur. The chick feels the ground beneath her feet growing softer, more giving, as though the earth itself is breathing slower. By evening, the rain softens to a mist. The forest emerges again, brighter for its soaking. Birds call from their hidden perches. Insects resume their fine-tuned hum. The chick walks beside her mother, her feathers heavy with water but her steps light. She feels different, more a part of the forest, as though the rain has washed something away that she didn't know she carried. They return to the shelter of the tall ferns, where the ground is dry enough for rest. The chick settles close to her mother, eyes closing as the last drops fall from the canopy. She dreams of green light and running water, of the taste of berries and the cool touch of rain along her back. And somewhere in the distance of her sleep, the low call she heard that morning sounds again. Nearer now, but still unknown. Dawn does not so much break here as it breathes into being. The mist that clung to the treetops loosens, drifting in pale ribbons down into the valleys, and the first gold threads of sunlight weave through the canopy. In the hush between darkness and day, the forest begins its song. Not with one voice, but with many, layered so seamlessly they seem born of the same breath. The tua's liquid notes rise first, bright and ringing, scattering in droplets of sound across the glades. They are joined by the deep, resonant coo of the kareru, a sound like the slow beating of a drum. Fantails chime in with quick, darting phrases, their calls as restless as their flight. Beneath these treble voices, the forest floor hums with the quiet work of insects, the rustle of leaves shifting under the weight of small, unseen feet. The young moa stands beside her mother in a patch of early sun, her feathers warming with the day's first light. She tilts her head, listening, not just to the birds but to the spaces between their calls, to the steady undercurrent that is the voice of the island itself. It is there in the sigh of the wind through the high branches, in the low murmur of a stream she cannot see, in the deep stillness of the ground beneath her. This is the song she was born into, one she has been hearing since the moment her shell first cracked. Her mother begins to walk, and the chick follows, stepping through the ferns with a quiet care she did not have in her earliest days. The path they take winds upward, climbing the side of a ridge. Each step opens a wider view. First the glade where they had slept, then the stretch of forest beyond, then, higher still, the pale thread of a river flashing between the trees. The song of the island changes as they climb. The higher they go, the more the wind's voice takes over, carrying scents from far-off places. Salt from the sea, resin from sun-struck pines, the faint musk of wetlands. At the ridge's crest, the world opens like a book. Below lies a vast sweep of forest and grassland, stitched together with rivers and shadowed by distant hills. Sunlight spills across the plains, catching on the silver undersides of leaves that shiver in the breeze. From here, the song of the island is almost too large to hold. Every bird call, every gust, every hidden movement blending into a chorus that has been singing long before her kind first walked these valleys. The mother moves down the far side of the ridge toward a place where the forest thins into meadow. Here, the song shifts again. The high canopy's echo is gone, replaced by the open-air chorus of skylarks and pipits, their voices carried unbroken on the wind. Grass hisses in the breeze, bending in waves as if the meadow itself is breathing. The chick steps into the open, feeling the sun full on her back, the ground springy beneath her feet. They feed here for a while, plucking the tender heads of young grasses. The chick learns to recognize the ones that bend easily in her beak from those that resist, their fibers too coarse to enjoy. Between mouthfuls, she looks up often, her gaze drawn to the shifting patterns of the grass in the wind, the way it flattens in one place and rises in another, as if invisible creatures are running just out of sight. In the afternoon, clouds gather over the distant mountains, their shadows stretching long across the land. The wind changes direction, bringing with it the distant roar of surf. The mother turns toward it, leading the way through the meadow and into another stretch of forest, where the trees grow shorter, their leaves salt-burnished. The air is sharper here, tasting of the sea. When they emerge from the last line of trees, the chick stops in awe. Before her, the island ends in a sweep of pale sand and the restless shimmer of water. The sea's voice is unlike the forest's, louder, deeper, always moving. Waves roll in and break with a sound like breath exhaled, over and over, without pause. Seabirds wheel overhead, their calls sharp against the wind. The mother does not linger on the shore, but the chick stands for a long moment, listening. The song of the island is different here, yet it still belongs to the same great melody she has been learning all her life. It is the voice of water-meeting land, of tides that have been coming and going since before there was forest to catch the wind. As the light begins to fade, they turn back toward the trees. The evening chorus rises behind them, gulls crying into the wind, the sea still speaking in its endless rhythm. By the time they reach the shelter of the ferns, the first stars are pricking the sky, and the forest has taken up its night song. The moor pork calls from deep within the shadows, its voice low and steady, while insects weave a high, constant hum through the darkness. The chick settles beside her mother, eyes closing to the music that has no beginning and no end. Somewhere in the weave of sound, she feels her own heartbeat finding its place in the island's rhythm, and as sleep drifts over her, she dreams not of one voice, but of many, each one part of the song that will carry her into the days yet to come. The day closes slowly, like a great bird folding its wings. The sun sinks behind the far hills, spilling its last light in a long golden sigh across the canopy. Shadows lengthen until they meet and mingle, and the bright greens of the forest deepen into velvet. A hush begins to gather in the spaces between the trees, not an emptiness but a waiting, an ancient pause in which the day's breath lingers before the night exhales. The young moa stands beside her mother at the edge of a clearing, their feathers still warm from the day. The air carries the cool breath of evening now, tinged with the scent of damp earth and the faint sweetness of night-blooming flowers. She watches the light slip away, the shapes of the forest softening as if the world itself were turning inward to rest. Above them, the first stars appear. Small, clear points in the deepening blue. 1, then 3, then a scatter, until the whole sky seems to open its eyes. The Southern Cross rises slowly from the eastern horizon, its tilted shape a quiet compass pointing toward the unseen pole. Its light falls pale upon the meadow, silvering the grasses and touching the young moas down with a ghostly glow. She has seen the stars before, but tonight she feels them more keenly, as though their presence presses gently on her from all sides. The night chorus begins. From deep within the forest comes the soft, repetitive call of the moor pork, roo-roo, roo-roo, a sound that feels older than the trees themselves. Insects take up their shimmering threads of song, weaving a high, constant hum that fills the spaces between bird calls. Somewhere far away, the faint rush of a river threads through the air, its sound softened by distance. Her mother moves forward, leading her toward a sheltered glade where they will rest. The ground here is dry, carpeted with the fallen fronds of many seasons, their edges curled like old parchment. The chick lowers herself to the earth, folding her long legs beneath her body, and feels the day's warmth stored in the soil. Her mother remains standing nearby, neck tall, watching the darkness with calm, unblinking eyes. The stars grow brighter as the night deepens. With no clouds to hide them, they seem impossibly many, scattered in rivers and clusters across the sky. The young moa tilts her head back, watching their slow drift. She does not know the shapes humans will one day trace between them. She sees instead the patterns the forest teaches. Stars as seeds scattered on black soil, as dew drops resting on a giant leaf, as eyes watching from far above. A cool wind stirs, sliding over the meadow and into the glade. It moves through the ferns with a sound like distant surf, bringing with it the sense of far-off places. Salt from the sea, resin from high mountain pines, the faint musk of wetlands. The chick breathes it in, her chest rising and falling in time with the forest's slow respiration. In this moment, she feels herself a part of something vast, connected by the invisible threads of air and scent and sound to every living thing on the island. Sleep comes gradually, like mist rising from a river. Her eyes close, then open again at the brush of wind through her feathers, then close once more. She dreams without knowing she dreams, her mind wandering through meadows lit by moonlight, across rivers that glow with starlight, over hills that hum with the quiet voices of ancestors she has never seen but somehow remembers. The night passes in this rhythm of waking and drifting. Once, she lifts her head to see her mother outlined against the starfield, the pale light tracing every curve of her neck, every sweep of her feathers. There is no urgency in her stance, no tension, only the quiet assurance of one who has stood through many such nights and will stand through many more. Hours later, the moon rises, full and white, climbing above the forest like a slow lantern. It casts its light across the meadow, turning every blade of grass into silver, every drop of dew into a tiny star. The chick stirs and lifts her head, her dark eyes reflecting the moon's glow. The forest seems different under this light, both clearer and more mysterious, as though the moon has its own language that only the night creatures can hear. She hears it in the slow footstep of a possum moving along a branch overhead, in the flutter of a bat's wings as it passes, in the sudden hush when a shadow moves across the meadow and the smaller birds fall silent. The moonlight makes each of these moments sharper, as if she is seeing the world in a new way. By the time the moon has climbed to its highest point, the forest has settled fully into night. The calls of the moorpork come less often now, the insect chorus steadier, the wind quieter. Her mother lowers herself to the ground at last, folding her long legs beneath her. The chick shifts closer until her side presses against the steady warmth. Together, they breathe in time with the sleeping island. In the distance, beyond the hills, a thin line of pale light begins to touch the horizon. It is still far from dawn, but the stars seem to sense it. They begin to fade, one by one, like candles burning low. The Southern Cross tilts westward, carrying its slow message into the next part of the sky. The chick closes her eyes again, her breathing deep, her mind filled with the quiet music of the night. Somewhere in her dreams, the stars remain, unchanged, patient, eternal, watching over her as they have watched over every moa before her, and as they will watch over the land long after her steps have faded. Morning lifts slowly, pouring light over the island in layers. The first beams slip between the ferns, pooling in small golden patches on the forest floor. The air is cool, damp with the breath of night, and the ground holds the memory of dew beneath each step. The young moa wakes to the sound of her mother shifting beside her, long legs unfolding in a movement that seems both powerful and unhurried. They begin their day with the quiet rhythm the chick has come to know, walking, foraging, pausing to listen, walking again. The forest is still dim beneath its ceiling of leaves, but she notices how the light catches in certain places, outlining the curve of a mossy trunk or the arch of a frond. She follows her mother along a narrow track that winds between towering tree ferns, the air rich with the scent of wet bark and the faint sweetness of last night's fallen blossoms. The path opens suddenly into a wide clearing. Here, the sun falls without obstruction, painting every blade of grass in sharp relief. And in that light, the chick sees them, others like her and her mother. Tall shapes move slowly through the meadow, their long necks rising and dipping in steady arcs as they graze. The sound of their footsteps is muffled by the grass, but she feels it all the same, a quiet drumbeat in the earth beneath her feet. She pauses, unsure. Until now, her world has been her mother, the forest, and the chorus of smaller voices that fill the air. But these are different. These are moa, taller than she imagined, their feathers patterned in subtle shades of brown and gold that shimmer when they turn in the light. Some stand alone, heads lifted as they survey the meadow. Others move in loose groups, their bodies aligned in a way that feels deliberate but unspoken. Her mother steps forward without hesitation, and the chick follows, her legs quick to match the longer stride. As they draw closer, a few of the moa glance their way. There is no alarm, no challenge, only a slow acknowledgement, a meeting of dark, steady eyes. One young hen, not much older than the chick, tilts her head in curiosity before returning to her grazing. They join the group at the meadow's edge, the air here alive with the quiet sounds of feeding, grass tearing, stems snapping, the faint rustle of movement. The chick watches how the others feed, noticing the subtle differences in how each bird selects a mouthful, how some prefer the taller shoots while others graze close to the ground. She mimics them, testing her beak against new textures, learning without being taught. As the morning stretches on, the group shifts together, moving across the meadow in an unhurried wave. The sun climbs higher and the light sharpens, catching on the gloss of feathers and the curve of strong legs. In this company, the chick feels something new, a sense of belonging that stretches beyond the bond she shares with her mother. The others are not family in the way she understands, yet their presence carries a quiet reassurance, as if the land itself is larger when they walk together. By midday, the warmth drives them toward the shade of the forest again. They move in a loose line, their tall forms threading between the trees, the sound of their passing like the wind pressing through dry leaves. The chick walks among them now, close enough to catch the faint scents each carries: sun on feathers, crushed grass, the musk of damp earth clinging to legs. She listens to the soft grunts and low hums they exchange, simple sounds that seem to hold more meaning than their simplicity suggests. In the forest's cool embrace, the group spreads out again. Some rest in the filtered light, necks folded gracefully along their backs. Others continue to forage, plucking leaves from low branches or pulling tender shoots from the soil. The chick lies down for a time, her body fitting neatly into the hollow her feet have pressed into the ground. She watches the older birds move, their gestures deliberate and calm, and feels the slow weaving of invisible threads that tie her to them, to this place, to a story that began long before she took her first breath. When the sun dips low, the moa drift toward the meadow once more, their shadows stretching long behind them. The chick stays close to her mother, but she no longer feels quite so small. Among these others, she senses the shape of her own future, the long stride she will one day take without thought, the way her neck will rise to meet the horizon, the quiet strength that comes from moving in step with the land and those who share it. As evening settles, the group gathers loosely at the meadow's edge. The light fades to amber, then to a deepening blue, and the first stars blink awake above the dark line of the forest. The air cools, carrying the scent of open grass and the faint salt of the distant sea. Somewhere behind them, a moorpork calls, its voice steady and low. The chick lowers herself to the ground beside her mother, the earth still warm beneath her. Around her, the others do the same, some standing, some resting, their tall shapes blending into the shadowed meadow. The Southern Cross hangs above them, its tilted points bright against the dark. In the quiet, she feels the weight of the day in her legs, the taste of new grasses still lingering on her tongue, and the steady hum of life that runs through every moa gathered here. She closes her eyes, and the world narrows to breath and heartbeat, to the rustle of feathers in the cool night air, to the faint chorus of the island that never truly sleeps. Somewhere beyond the meadow, the forest waits, the rivers sing, and the wind carries the promise of days yet to come. The days lengthen and lean toward the warm heart of the year. Morning comes earlier now, the first light spilling into the forest before the mist has had time to settle. The air feels different, drier in the afternoons, touched with a restless edge in the evenings. The young moa senses it without understanding. The world she has known until now has always moved in familiar cycles, each season slipping quietly into the next. But lately, the rhythm feels slightly altered, as though a note in the island's great song has been tuned just a little off-key. She walks with her mother across the meadow where they first met the others of their kind. The grass is shorter here than in previous seasons, the tender shoots harder to find. The ground feels warmer beneath her feet, the soil giving off a scent that is more dust than green. They still find enough to feed, but the searching takes longer. Her mother moves in wider arcs, head swinging as she looks for the richest patches. The wind, too, has changed. It carries the same scents she knows: salt from the sea, resin from the high forests, but there is a sharper note now, dry and metallic, that prickles in her nostrils. On some days it comes from the north, warm and insistent, pushing the clouds away and leaving the sky a hard, empty blue. On other days, it blows from the south, sudden and cold, dragging clouds over the mountains and sending quick, heavy rains that vanish as swiftly as they arrive. In the forest, certain plants she once fed on freely have begun to taste different. Less tender, more bitter. Berries ripen earlier than before, their skins splitting in the heat, their sweetness already past. Streams she drank from as a chick run lower now, their beds exposing stones that once lay hidden beneath the current. The changes are small enough to pass without alarm, yet together they weave a thread of unease through her days. One afternoon, a storm builds without warning. Dark clouds roll in from the sea, stacking themselves into high walls that blot out the sun. The air grows thick and heavy, and the wind rises with a voice she has never heard, low and urgent, like a warning carried across great distances. The moa gather at the edge of the forest, their heads high, eyes fixed on the shifting sky. When the rain comes, it is not the gentle drumming she remembers from her first season. It falls in great sheets, bending the ferns to the ground, churning the meadow into slick, trampled mud. Lightning flashes, illuminating the tall shapes of the moa in sharp white, and thunder follows in a deep, rolling wave. The young moa presses close to her mother, feeling the vibrations run through the earth beneath her feet. By morning, the storm has passed, but the meadow is changed. Pools of water gleam in the low places, and the air smells of torn vegetation. Some plants lie flattened, their stems broken. The others begin to feed again, but the chick notices how the ground squelches under each step, and how the water in the pools reflects a sky still restless with wind. As the weeks pass, the shifts in the weather become part of the pattern. The heat grows sharper, the storms more sudden, the wind more restless. The nights are not as cool as before, and even under the southern stars the air sometimes feels heavy. Insects hum longer into the darkness, and certain birds change their calls, as if the altered air carries their voices differently. She begins to notice other changes too, subtle absences. A certain low call she once heard at dusk is missing now. The flash of a familiar bird's plumage in the canopy has not been seen for days. The forest still teems with life, but some threads of the song seem to have slipped away. Still, life continues. She feeds, she walks, she rests beneath the moon. Her mother leads her to new feeding grounds when the old ones grow sparse. The others drift in and out of their company, joining for days or weeks before wandering away again. But always the wind follows. Sometimes cool, sometimes warm, sometimes whispering with secrets she cannot yet understand. One evening, as the sun sinks red behind the hills, she stands in the open and feels the wind curl around her body. It smells faintly of smoke, though no fire burns within sight. It carries a taste of something distant and strange, a trace of change that feels as though it is moving toward her. The meadow shivers in the breeze, and the first stars prick the sky. She does not know it yet, but the wind has begun to bring more than just the weather. The morning begins as many have before. Soft light sifting through the high canopy, beads of dew resting on the curled tips of ferns, the steady measured pace of her mother's steps ahead. Yet something in the air feels faintly unsettled. The wind, which has been restless for many days, has gone still. It is the kind of stillness that makes the leaves hold their breath, and the birds pause between songs. They follow a familiar path along the edge of a low meadow, where the grass is new and sweet from recent rain. The young moa lowers her head to feed, tearing the tender shoots with slow precision. She is halfway, through her mouthful when she notices it, an imprint in the soft earth just ahead, caught in a patch of light where the canopy breaks. It is not a moa track. Her own people leave prints broad and rounded, with the clear fan of 3 toes splayed upon the ground. This mark is narrower, more pointed, the toes longer and tipped with deep, sharp impressions where something heavier than her weight has pressed down. The edges are crisp, fresh enough that the morning's dew still glistens along the ridges of the soil. She freezes, neck high, her eyes scanning the meadow. Nothing moves there except the grass swaying faintly in the light breeze that has begun to stir again. The scent is strange. Earthy, yes, but threaded with a dry musk she has never smelled before. A note that prickles the edges of her memory, though she cannot place it. Her mother has stopped too, her head tilted slightly, eyes fixed on the ground ahead. She does not call out or show alarm, but her body stills in a way the young moa has learned to read, attention sharpened, senses tuned. For a long moment they stand side by side, the forest around them holding its breath. Then her mother moves forward, stepping over the track without pause, and the young moa follows. Yet she glances back once, memorizing the shape, the way the toes pressed deep into the wet earth, the scent that lingered faintly in the air. As they move deeper into the meadow, more of the strange prints appear. Some cut across their path. Others wander in loose arcs, as though whoever left them had paused here and there before moving on. The young moa notices that in places the grass has been crushed flat, not in the broad swaths her own kind leave, but in narrow, irregular patterns. They find another patch of prints near a stand of young trees at the meadow's edge. Here, the ground is softer still, and the marks are even more pronounced. She lowers her head to inspect them more closely, drawing in the scent again. This time, she catches another note beneath the dry musk, something sharper, almost bitter, that makes her lift her head quickly and blink as though clearing her mind. Her mother leads them away from the tracks without hurry, but also without lingering. They pass through the fringe of forest, where the light filters green and cool. The chick keeps close, her ears full of the soft thud of their feet on the leaf-littered ground. Yet the image of those prints stays in her mind, vivid and unshakable. The day unfolds as it always does, feeding, walking, resting in the shade during the warmest hours. But wherever they go, she looks now at the ground with fresh attention. The familiar signs of her world are there, the rounded tracks of other moa, the fine scratches of skinks, the delicate paired marks of weta. Yet, every now and then she finds again that alien shape cutting through the softer imprints, its presence threading across the land in lines she cannot follow. In the late afternoon, the wind shifts. It carries with it a whisper of the sea and, beneath that, the same faint, bitter scent she noticed earlier. She lifts her head, nostrils flaring, trying to catch more of it. The meadow is quiet, the shadows lengthening, but the feeling of being watched, though perhaps it is only imagined, lingers like a low hum beneath her thoughts. When the sun sinks, they find a place to rest beneath the wide arch of a tree fern. The light fades to amber, then violet, and the stars begin to scatter across the darkening sky. Yet, even as she folds her legs beneath her and feels the warmth of the earth seep into her body, her mind drifts back to those prints. She wonders what kind of creature leaves such narrow marks, why it moves through her meadow, and whether it will return. She does not know that the tracks belong to something new on the island, something that will change the shape of her world in ways she cannot yet imagine. For now, they are only a mystery pressed into soft earth, a puzzle the night will keep. The morning light was sharper today, pouring into the world in clean, unbroken lines. The air felt clear, almost thin, the kind of air that carried sound farther than it should. The young moa walked behind her mother through a narrow corridor of trees, each step muffled by the deep litter of fallen fronds. Overhead, the canopy began to thin, and the spaces between the trunks widened, letting longer blades of light fall to the ground. She knew this place, not the exact path, but the feeling of it. It was where the forest loosened its hold and began to let in the open grasslands, where the protective shadows gave way to the sky's vast blue. She had come here only once before, and only briefly. The air at the edge felt different, full of scents from far away, scents that did not belong to the deep heart of the island. Her mother slowed. They reached a point where the trees broke apart entirely, spilling them into a stretch of open ground. Grass swept in golden arcs, moving with the faint wind like the slow breathing of the land. The sky here was wide, without the green ceiling she had always known. She blinked against its brightness, her eyes tracing the distant hills where the light pooled in silver and shadow. The young moa stepped forward cautiously. The ground felt less forgiving here, drier, the soil more compact beneath the roots of the grass. The scents on the air were sharper, carrying the salt of the sea and the dry heat of the open plain. But there was something else, too, faint yet persistent, the same strange musk she had smelled on the tracks in the meadow, threaded now with the sharper bitterness she could not name. They moved along the edge, the forest still close to their left, the open land to their right. Her mother's movements were slow but deliberate, pausing often to lift her head and scan the horizon. The young moa did the same, though she wasn't entirely sure what she was looking for. The grassland rippled in the light, shadows pooling between its waves. Somewhere far off, a bird she had never heard before called in a low, rolling note. The forest behind them was alive with sound, the usual chorus of the island. Tuan trilling in bright bursts, the rustle of lizards moving in the leaf litter, the hum of insects rising with the sun. But here, at the edge, there was a different kind of quiet. It was not silence exactly. It was an openness, a space between sounds that made every noise sharper. The snap of a twig underfoot seemed louder. The cry of the distant bird carried longer before fading. They foraged among the tall grasses for a while. Some of the stems were coarse, their edges rough on her beak, but others were sweet and fresh. She pulled them in slow, deliberate mouthfuls, always glancing up between bites. The edge of the forest felt like a place where eyes could be on you without you knowing. Then she saw it. In a shallow patch of earth between the grass, the soil was disturbed. The mark was faint, partly filled with blown dust, but it had the same narrow shape as the prints in the meadow. The long toes, the deep points where claws had pressed. She felt her chest tighten. The scent here was fresher, curling upward from the disturbed earth in a way that made her step back. Her mother approached the spot, lowered her head, and held still for several moments. The young moa watched her, waiting for some sign. Alarm, warning, anything. But the older bird simply straightened again and moved on, stepping back toward the safety of the forest's edge. They followed the tree line for the rest of the morning, never straying too far into the open. The wind shifted once, carrying with it a sound she did not recognize, a short, rhythmic knock, like wood striking against wood. It came from somewhere far out in the grasslands, too distant to see, but the sound carried all the same. Her mother's head lifted sharply at it, her body stilled, then she moved again without explanation. By the time the sun began to fall, the forest's shadow had reached long into the grass, pulling the coolness back toward the open ground. They stepped inside the trees again, the green light closing around them like a familiar cloak. The air here smelled of moss and water, of the deep safety she had known all her life, but she could not shake the feeling of the open edge, the way the horizon seemed to watch, the way the ground there bore the marks of something she had never seen. That night, as the stars rose and the Southern Cross tilted into its place above the canopy, The young moa lay close to her mother and listened to the forest's breathing. Yet, in her mind, she still saw the thin line between trees and grass, the place where the island's song felt different, thinner, stranger. She did not know that soon she would return there, not as a visitor to its edge, but as a witness to what moved beyond it. Dawn arrives pale and hesitant, the first light spilling over the canopy, without its usual warmth. The air feels cooler, the kind of cool that clings to the skin rather than refreshing it. The young moa wakes to a quiet that feels wrong, not the natural hush before birdsong, but a hollow space where voices should be. She rises and follows her mother through the trees toward a clearing where they have often fed at this hour. Normally, the forest here greets the day with a swelling chorus, the bright liquid notes of the tu, the slow coo of the kareru, the high chatter of fantails weaving through the undergrowth. But this morning, the air holds only the faint rustle of leaves and the distant rush of water. The missing sounds are like gaps in a woven mat, small on their own, but together forming a pattern you cannot ignore. When they reach the clearing, it is empty. The grass stands unbent by other feeding birds. No shadows move at the edges. Her mother begins to graze without hesitation, but the young moa keeps looking toward the tree line, waiting for the shapes she has come to expect. None appear. They feed in silence for a long while. The sun climbs, sending thin beams through the spaces between the trees. She chews slowly, her eyes scanning the ground. There are fewer tracks here than before. The round imprints of other moa are scarce, the shallow lines left by smaller birds almost absent. In one corner of the clearing, the soil is disturbed in a way that makes her chest tighten. Narrow prints, long toes, pressed deep into the earth. The scent that rises from them is faint but unmistakable. By midday, they have moved deeper into the forest, following a path toward a river bend rich in young shoots. Along the way, they pass a place where she once saw a small flock of moa grazing together. The ground here tells a different story now. The grass is overgrown, the earth undisturbed for days. A kareru bursts from a low branch as they pass, but it is alone, its heavy wing beats vanishing quickly into the distance. In the afternoon, they find another group of moa at last, but it is smaller than she remembers. 3 birds, all older, move slowly through a patch of scrub. Their feathers are dull in the slanting light, their movements subdued. A brief exchange of low hums passes between the adults, but there is no closeness to it, no sense of the loose, easy company she once felt among the gatherings. After a short while, the group drifts apart again, vanishing between the tree trunks as if carried off by the air itself. That night, the quiet presses even closer. The moorpork still calls from deep in the forest, but its voice sounds lonelier somehow, the spaces between each ruru longer than before. The insect chorus is thin, missing the full-bodied hum that usually fills the dark. Lying beside her mother beneath the curved fronds, the young moa listens until the sounds become part of her breathing. But she cannot shake the sense that something is leaving, slipping away one voice at a time. The next morning, she wakes before the first light. The forest is still black, the air damp and cool. She waits, listening for the dawn chorus to begin. A few notes rise from somewhere far off. A tua's song, tentative and short, but it fades without answering calls. Another bird tries a few low phrases, then falls silent. By the time the light reaches the forest floor, the day has begun without its full music. They walk again to the meadow's edge, where the wind moves in long, slow breaths across the grass. The horizon glows pale under a thin veil of cloud. Her mother grazes steadily, untroubled by the quiet, but the young moa keeps glancing at the spaces beyond the forest. She does not yet know why the air feels heavier here, why the wind sometimes carries scents that make her pulse quicken. But she knows the quiet is not an accident. She lowers her head to feed, tasting the bitterness of older grass, and the memory of those strange prints rises in her mind again. Sharp toes pressed deep into the soil, the strange musk curling in the air above them. She wonders how far such tracks travel, and how many other clearings they might cross. The sun climbs higher, and the open ground shimmers faintly in the heat. The young moa takes a step closer to the edge, looking out at the rolling grasslands. Somewhere out there, beyond sight, the missing voices may have walked their last paths. She does not yet understand what that means, but the wind shifts, and with it comes a faint, bitter scent that makes her lift her head sharply. Her mother calls softly, a low, urging hum, and she turns back toward the safety of the forest. Yet, even as they disappear into the shadows, the young moa keeps glancing over her shoulder toward the open land, the scent still sharp in her nostrils, the quiet of the dawn still pressing at the edges of her thoughts. The morning breaks without song. A thin, colorless light seeps through the canopy, but the air holds no music to welcome it. The young moa wakes to the sound of her own breath and the slow stir of her mother's feathers. The stillness is heavy now, familiar enough to no longer feel strange, yet never fully comfortable. They begin to walk before the sun has fully risen, moving away from the clearings they know and deeper into the less traveled paths. Her mother sets the pace, long strides carrying them across slopes where the moss grows thick and springs rise in cold silver pools. The young moa follows close, but she senses this is not an ordinary journey. There is a direction in her mother's movements, a pull towards something far beyond their usual bounds. By mid-morning, they reach a ridge that opens onto a view she has never seen. The land stretches in vast folds of forest and plain, shadowed by distant mountains whose peaks wear thin veils of cloud. The rivers here gleam like threads of light, winding through the valleys as if stitching the island together. The air is different, clearer, thinner, touched with the cold breath of high places. They descend into the valley below, where the trees stand wider apart and the undergrowth is sparse. Here, her mother pauses often to graze, pulling at ferns whose fronds taste sharper than the ones near home. The young moa samples them, memorizing the flavor, the texture, the way the stalks break between her beak. Each new plant is a lesson, each stream a new page in the island's long story. As the day passes, they cross the paths of others. Some are moa she has never seen before, taller or heavier, their feathers patterned differently. These meetings are quiet but not cold, a pause, a shared glance, a brief alignment of bodies before each continues their own way. She realizes then how far they have traveled, into ranges where other flocks move to their own rhythms, in landscapes shaped by winds she has never felt. In the late afternoon, they climb another ridge. From its crest, the world rolls away in a series of green waves, each hill fading into softer tones until it meets the pale horizon. Her mother stands still for a long time, the wind lifting her feathers, her gaze fixed on the distance. The young moa waits beside her, feeling the pull of the open land ahead, the invitation to keep moving. That night, they rest beneath a sky so wide it seems to swallow the forest whole. The stars are brighter here, the Southern Cross hanging lower, its points steady against the black. The wind speaks in the low, steady voice of the high country, carrying with it a sense of snowmelt and rock. The young moa drifts to sleep with the sensation of movement still in her legs, as if even in rest she is walking on. The days that follow become a long, slow journey. They move through valleys where the grass grows tall enough to brush against her chest. across plains where the wind bends the landscape into flowing shapes. They skirt the edges of rivers swollen from mountain rains, their waters rushing with a voice too loud to belong to the forest. Everywhere they go, the signs of absence are there. Some valleys are rich and full, their feeding grounds busy with life. Others are strangely empty, the ground bearing the faint marks of old tracks, the air quiet as if holding its breath. She sees fewer gatherings than before, and those they meet seem smaller, more scattered. The sense of thinning, of something slowly being pulled away, is impossible to ignore now. One evening, they pass through a low saddle between hills, and the scent on the air makes her stop. It is the same one she has come to recognize. The narrow track scent, dry and bitter. It drifts from somewhere ahead, curling through the grass and into the forest edge. Her mother pauses too, head lifted, eyes sharp in the fading light. But instead of turning back, she moves forward, unhurried but deliberate, as if this path must still be walked despite what lingers upon it. They travel until the sky has turned deep blue and the first stars begin to appear. At last, her mother leads them to a wide, sheltered basin where the grass grows thick and the wind cannot reach. Here, others are gathered, more than she has seen in many weeks. They stand in loose groups, grazing, resting, shifting slowly through the basin's quiet abundance. There is no greeting, no call, but the presence of so many tall shapes in one place feels like the closing of a circle. The young moa feeds among them, her movements matching the slow rhythm of the flock. She feels the quiet strength of their nearness, the way their shadows merge in the moonlight, the way their breathing rises and falls like a single tide. Yet even here, the edges of the basin are watched, and the wind is tested often for scents that do not belong. When she finally rests, lying in the shelter of her mother's body, she realizes she does not know if this journey will end here or continue on. But in her bones, she feels the truth of it. This is more than a search for food or open ground. It is a roaming that gathers what remains, a walking together while there is still time to walk at all. The basin is empty when the first light reaches it. The tall shapes that filled it only days ago have gone, their presence lingering only in the faint, trampled arcs of grass and the warm scent in the soil. The young moa stands where she slept, the open sky pale above her, and listens for the low hums and soft rustles that should mark the start of the day. But there is nothing. Only the distant call of a single bird and the whisper of wind along the ridges. Her mother moves first, stepping toward the northern edge of the basin where the ground rises into a slope. The young moa follows, her legs heavy, though she does not yet understand why. They climb slowly, and at the crest, the world beyond rolls out in folds of muted green and brown. The grasslands stretch toward the horizon, but they are not alive with movement as they once were. The emptiness is not only in the sight of the land, but in the feel of it. The air is thin with silence. They descend into the next valley, where a stream winds lazily through stands of low trees. The water is shallow, its surface broken by the occasional dart of a small fish. Here, they feed for a while, pulling at the soft shoots along the banks. But even as she eats, the young moa keeps glancing up, her eyes tracing the far slopes. She remembers how, in her earliest seasons, there would always be movement there, distant moa grazing, their heads lifting now and then to scan the wind. Today, the slopes are bare. The days that follow seem to stretch longer than before. They walk through valleys and across ridges, moving from one feeding ground to another, but the gatherings they find are few and small. Sometimes there is only a single bird, feeding alone, its neck bent low as though to avoid the weight of the sky. When they meet, there is no closeness, just a pause, a glance, and then a return to the quiet work of survival. The wind brings more of that strange, dry scent, now drifting in and out of the trees without warning. It comes from no single direction, as if it is everywhere and nowhere at once. The young moa catches it in the morning sometimes, sharp and sudden, before it fades again into the ordinary smells of leaf and soil. Each time it comes, her mother stills, head lifted, her gaze fixed far into the open land. Then, without a word, they move on. The forest itself feels different. The songs of certain birds have thinned almost to nothing, their calls now rare enough to startle when they come. Insects still hum in the afternoons, but their chorus is not as full as it once was. Even the rivers seem quieter, their voices lower, as though they too are conserving themselves. One evening, they reach a high place where the land drops away in a great sweep of meadow and forest. The setting sun lays its long gold fingers across the ground, painting everything in soft fire. The young moa stands beside her mother and looks out, and though the view is beautiful, it feels hollow, like a song sung in an empty hall. The silence beneath the wind is heavy here, pressing into her chest until she has to breathe deeply to fill it. They descend into the valley and rest beneath the shadow of a giant tree fern. Night gathers slowly, the sky deepening into indigo. The first stars appear, then more, until the Southern Cross hangs clear above them. She listens for the night voices, the moor pork, the rustle of small creatures in the undergrowth, but they, too, are few. The next morning, the dawn is so quiet she can hear the dew sliding from the tips of the ferns. They walk again, and the forest opens now and then to reveal clearings where the grass has grown high and unbent for lack of feeding. In one such clearing, she sees tracks, narrow, sharp, pressed deep into the earth. They are fresh. She does not need to lower her head to know their scent. Her mother turns without hesitation, leading them back into the shelter of the trees. They move for hours, the sun climbing high and then slipping low again, the wind brushing past with that same strange taste. By the time they stop, the sky is orange and the shadows long. The young moa lowers herself to the ground, folding her legs beneath her. Her mother stands for a time, watching the spaces between the trees before settling beside her. In the fading light, the quiet feels deeper than ever. Not a pause, but something that has taken root. Above them, the stars begin to prick the sky, one by one. The young moa closes her eyes, but the silence follows her into sleep, stretching ahead like a path she does not yet know the end of. The days have narrowed into a quiet path. The young moa, though she is no longer young, moves through the forest with a slower rhythm now, her steps measured, her gaze lingering on the places she once passed without thought. Her legs still carry her across the ridges, down into valleys, and through the meadows where the wind moves in long silver waves, but each journey feels more like a farewell than a search. The silences have deepened. The calls of the tue and kereru are rare treasures now, startling in their suddenness before fading into the waiting air. Many clearings stand untouched, their grasses grown high and coarse. She remembers these same spaces alive with movement. Moa feeding side by side, their shadows stretching long in the morning light. Now, only her own shadow moves there, and sometimes even that feels like a ghost. Her mother is gone. There was no struggle, no sudden absence, only a day when the older bird no longer rose with the dawn. The young moa had stood beside her, feeling the quiet settle over them, and understood without knowing how that the journey would be hers alone from now on. She walked on because the land still asked her to, because the paths were not yet finished beneath her feet. She roams farther than she ever has, crossing ridges where the air tastes of snow, moving down to plains where the wind smells of salt. Each place holds memories like seeds pressed into the soil. The soft curve of a hillside where she once stood with her mother at sunset, the cool shadow of a stream where she drank as a chick, the hollow of a fern glade where she rested among the others. Some of these places feel unchanged, their beauty untouched. Others seem thinner, as though part of their song has faded beyond hearing. The strange tracks are everywhere now. Some are old and half filled with dust. Others are sharp and fresh, the long toes pressing deep into the earth. Their scent follows her along the edges of the forest, drifts into the meadows, lingers even in the high valleys where she once thought nothing unfamiliar could reach. She no longer startles at them, only changes her path, moving on without pause. Her body is slower now, but her senses are sharper. She notices the way the light changes before rain, the exact scent of grass just before it ripens, the sound of a branch shifting under the weight of wind. She moves with care, not because she fears the land, but because each step feels like a word in a sentence she wants to speak clearly before it is done. One evening, she reaches a high bluff overlooking the sea. The horizon glows with the last light of the sun, the water shifting in sheets of gold and blue. She stands there until the stars appear, the Southern Cross tilting slowly above the dark. The wind from the ocean is cool on her feathers, and it carries no strange scent, only the salt and the endless breath of waves. In that moment she feels both entirely alone and entirely part of the island, as if the land and sea are holding her in place between them. The nights are longer now. She rests beneath the curved shelter of ferns, her body warm against the cool earth, and dreams of the island as it was, alive with voices, heavy with movement, the air thick with the mingled scents of many lives. She wakes to the quiet and lies still for a while, letting the memory fade slowly, like mist under the morning sun. One morning, she does not rise as quickly. The air is damp, heavy with the smell of rain yet to come. She remains in the hollow of her resting place, her legs folded beneath her, her head low. The forest around her is still. A single drop of water falls from a frond above, landing on her back and sliding slowly down. She breathes in deeply, drawing the scent of earth, leaf, and distant sea into her chest. The rain begins in fine threads, barely touching the ground before vanishing into the air. She closes her eyes, feeling it on her feathers, listening to the soft hiss as it moves through the canopy. It is a sound she has known all her life, one that has never changed. The forest is quieter now, the gatherings fewer, but the rain still falls the same way it always has. She rests there for a long time, the rhythm of her breath joining the rhythm of the rain. The paths she has walked feel close now, as if they have folded in on themselves, bringing every memory to the same place. She does not think of moving on. The forest will remember her steps. The wind will remember her scent. The island will carry her shape in its shadows and grass. Her eyes close again, not in sleep, but in a stillness that feels like belonging. She breathes once more, deeply, as if to take the whole island into herself, and then lets it go. The forest stands quiet, but it is not empty. Morning light filters through the canopy, bending around the slow drift of mist that clings to the hollows. Fern fronds arch wide, heavy with dew, each droplet catching the sun and scattering it into fragments of gold. Beneath this glistening green roof, the paths remain, some faint, some deep, pressed into the earth by steps that no longer fall. The wind moves gently through them, as though tracing the shape of those who walked here long ago. In the high meadows, the grass still sways in long silver waves. The seasons come and go as they always have, painting the land with their quiet colors. Spring's pale shoots, summer's gold, autumn's deep rust, winter's shadowed frost. The rivers keep to their courses, slipping over stone and root, carrying with them the memory of every beak that ever drank from their surface. Where the great fern hollow once lay, the earth is soft and sun-warmed. New shoots push through the soil, their green tender and bright. On some mornings, a carreru lands nearby, the branch bending beneath its weight as it feeds on berries, just as it did in years past. The moorpork still calls in the night, its voice drifting through the darkness, unhurried and sure. The moa is gone, but her presence lingers in ways the living world understands. The curve of her path through the undergrowth remains a lighter green, where the ferns have grown back differently. The meadow, where she stood with her mother at sunset, still catches the wind in the same way, bending the grass toward the horizon. Even the air carries her, faint trace, woven into the mingled scents of moss, leaf, and rain. In the still hours before dawn, the island itself seems to breathe her memory. The ridges hold her shape in their shadows. The valleys carry her echo in the slow exhale of mist. The land has no need for words. It remembers in the tilt of the wind, the bend of the trees, the quiet that falls just before the first bird calls. Seasons turn again, and the forest grows thicker in some places, more open in others. New birds come, some with songs the island has not heard before. Others vanish, their voices slipping into the same quiet that now holds the moa. The balance shifts and reshapes itself, as it always has, but beneath it all runs the deep, unbroken thread of memory. Sometimes, on certain evenings when the sun sets low and the air is still, the light seems to catch on something unseen at the edge of the meadow. A tall shadow moves for the briefest moment, neck swaying gently, legs placing each step with careful grace. It leaves no mark, no sound, only the feeling, as the wind brushes past, that something ancient has just walked by. The island keeps these moments close. It holds them in the hush of the forest after rain, in the silver quiet of nights under the Southern Cross, in the rhythm of waves that meet the shore and retreat again. It does not mourn in the way the living do. It carries, it remembers, and it weaves the memory into every leaf and every breath. And so, even though no moa walks the valleys now, the island is never without her. She is there in the green shadow of the ferns, in the long gold of the grasslands, in the salt-threaded wind that moves through the high places. She is there in the stillness before dawn, in the low call of the moorpork, in the quiet patience of the rivers. The moa sleeps, but the island remembers. And in that remembering, she walks still, forever part of the song that began long before her first step, and will go on long after the last note fades into the wind.